Perfect. Yay, thank you very much. Um, Thank you very much, Toodaloo Fruitaloo. Really appreciate it. Um, okay, so uh, I guess I might as well start right back from the beginning. So I was talking about that I was doing some work with a person I discovered on a Facebook group this week. They were looking for some information about an ancestor. Specifically, it was a Scottish genealogy Facebook group this person was looking for. And often, um, people that are um, replying in, re- replying in the comments when people ask a question, they're not always, they aren't the friendliest and most helpful. Now, sometimes that is because people come into these forums and I've seen on Facebook and Reddit and other places, they ask a very general question like, um, I have a grandfather whose name was um, whatever, and they came from, in this case, Scotland. They're my third great grandfather. They don't know anything more about them, and they're asking you as a genealogist, well, what can you find any information about this person? Um, and that that can be a little annoying because that would be like me going into um, someplace in the United States and just asking, "Do you know John Smith?" Um, I would you'd probably look at me dumbfounded and go, why, what the, like you need more information." So what type of information should you have when you're asking these questions, or you're wanting to um, get answers to some of these questions you have, especially if you don't know, you don't know a lot of genealogy already. Um, what you need to do is start with the information you have and try to figure it out. So if I was to go to a city and I ask um, if you knew John Smith, well, you'd have many questions narrowed down to maybe find out what John Smith I could possibly be talking about. Um, so think of those type of things. For instance, the period that you're looking for this person, um, their approximate age or date of birth, their occupation, their spouse. These things can all be very helpful. Um, and sometimes it's not as easy to get, but when you're getting your research, if you've gotten to the point that you're looking for an ancestor that's coming from a different place, um, and you're or anywhere really, and you're looking to um, get some information about them or help in that, you'll probably have some information that can lead you to knowing those types of things to help narrow it down. Um, for instance, often in a death certificate in North America, it seems that people, their death registration might have a birth date, might have an age. Um, Again, you want to take that with a little bit of grain of salt because often the informant, that's the person that's helping to fill out that death registration, might not have known the person as intimately to know the exact details. The person themselves sometimes don't know the exact details. Um, they might just know that they might know the actual birth date, but they might not know the year. So sometimes it's a guess, thinking like, oh, he was 76, I think, on his last birthday. So you minus 76 from the current year, and you get the birth date. May or may not be right. So birth dates, especially when you're looking and you don't have the exact information, you don't already have a birth certificate. You you want to sort of have a range, even if you have a marriage certificate that might give the age. Again, you got to be very, very careful, um, because that could be off. That also could be, depending on what month of the year, you could be a year off. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Often the um, the death certificate informant could be grieving as well. So they're not thinking straight. They're not in the sense that it's um, or they just don't know the information. For example, I had a call from a cousin, um, a first cousin once removed, sorry, second cousin once removed. I always forget my cousins. What you actually call? I always um, just on my mom's side of the family. My mother didn't have any siblings that lasted past infancy, so a lot of her cousins are more like uncles and aunts to me. Um, anyway, she was looking for some information on her grandmother, my great grandmother. So because her father just recently passed away, and she was filling out that information, and she didn't know uh, her middle initial. So we were our middle name, and why she called me to see what I could find, um, and I realized it's not something I really had a good record of either. Though I did find on one census that does list their initials, so we went with that. Um, but you, so often the people don't know some details like that, and middle initial, middle name can definitely help. Um, so the excuse me, that's okay too. I do appreciate it. So yeah, the uh, when you're looking at that, you can to your go back to your basics. You start looking at that death certificate. Uh, often you might not have the details of where they came from. Um, just that they were from a different country or a different place. It can be very vague sometimes, um, and it might just say Scotland, um, or it might not say anything. Um, sometimes they just it's unknown because they're or it's what's is suspected. For instance, somebody with the last name McDonald, you probably suspect they were from Scotland, but it's possible they weren't Ulster Scot or Scots Irish. So, how do you start narrowing that information down? Because if they were 200 years ago, there's nobody you can ask. Hey, you know where my third great grandfather where did he come from Scotland? Um, so what you can do start doing is looking at the local community. Um, look look at the, the the church and the history of the church often that they might have belonged to. That will sometimes give you some vital clues because people tended to go where their people were. So if often when you're coming to a new place, um, if you weren't being sent there specifically because you had no choice in the matter, and if there was some choice, you often would go to a place that either you had some type of family connection or community connection. Look around, or once you get there, even you tend to find people that were from your community, and you tend um, to congregate and associate with them. So often looking at the community, and if you see a large part of the community is from a certain area, and especially if you start noticing that a lot of the people from the community seem to pop up around the same time that that person was arrived, or the first time you see that person, because that can be the difficult thing there too. Is when you're looking at individuals, you don't always have that record of immigration. Um, you have that. Uh, you might just know. Here they were. The first record I have of them is they got married in 1812, and so you that's the first record you have, and you know they got married in here, and but uh, you don't know where they came from, um, and when they actually arrived. Or it could be that you see them on a census for the first time, or on some other type of document, for instance, a land grant. So knowing that, you have to do a lot of um, presumptive things. For instance, uh, if you're looking and you you know their families, parents' names. Um, yeah, and it wasn't even necessarily that the government did that. I think people just naturally did that. That's why even today you have in large cities you have like a Chinatown, or you have a um, large area like maybe a little Bombay where um, Indian people live. It it's it's I think more common because it's a natural. You know, you're gonna want to go where people have the same experiences as you. They you can relate to them. And yeah, often they the governments would do it, or it just came natural. You know, another big motivator sometimes or direction is a particular church. Um, if you're, for instance, um, a Mennonite, you're probably not going to go where there's no Mennonite church unless you were going specifically to be an evangelist. But you'd probably try to go where there were other existing There was a Mennonite church and Mennonite farmers around already. If you were looking for a place, just because it would be it would be natural. It's where it would be where you want to go. So looking at those type of things and seeing where those groups of people came from. Sometimes it can be very broad. They can just be as broad as, yeah, that's a group of Scottish people, but without knowing exactly where. Um, Also looking at um, you're looking at the time when they came here. Like I said, you look when they first appeared. You know that that's the first appearance you have them in North America, or that you have a record of for sure. So you know you're where you're looking for them before. You know their age if you know their age or their approximate age. Again, you can't always be exact on that for the reasons stated earlier. You can um, start like I mean, in the marriage, you might know that they were 21 and in 1812, so you know whereabouts you were looking for them um, to come to. When they arrived, it was sometime in well, in the last 21 years. But a clue can be looking if you can find their parents. If you find no parents, if you find their parents and you don't find like from the marriage certificate, you know their names and you don't find them in uh, listed as living in that community on the marriage certificate sometimes, or you can't find them at all in any search in any of the records of that community. You can't find their parents. You know that their parents probably stayed in Scotland, so you can start looking with their parents' names, not just looking for matches um, of those in death records over in Scotland or wherever the case may be. I'm just using Scotland because this is where this particular person was looking, and it's common. So knowing that type of thing, knowing their occupation, that can knowing their occupation often can help narrow down where they might have come from, because there are certain communities that are known for certain things. Um, for instance, if they came over as an adult and they were, and this is the case in my my mother's father's family. They first came. They were coal miners. Actually, he was a miner at a manager at a coal mine, pretty much right from the start. So he had some experience. So if I didn't know anything that I didn't already know about him, I would know that I would start looking at places where there was coal mines to see where he would have came from. Uh, that would be at least a start, and then comparing that with other people around in the community. Knowing names of children can be very helpful too, especially I know Scottish and with Irish people, they have a um, certain patterns of naming children, um, and I think a lot of cultures do have different patterns. But you knowing knowing the names that are common in the family um, can be helpful. If you know the uh, the Scottish naming preferences, you could, and you know the children of the person you're looking for, you can probably figure out his parents' names if he had a large number of children, which often they did back then. You might be able to tell what a good idea what his father's name probably is if you don't know that, um, as well as the mother's name. If you have the right amount of children, you'd be able to tell even more. Um, Looking at those common names too, and if they had a sibling that came at the same time of them, um, you can you can probably know if they're older or younger um, where they are in line and what family names you might be looking for as far as parents. Um, you can There's lots of things you can do. So instead of just going into a form and asking, "Hey, can you find John McDonald from Scotland?" You might be able to narrow it down. Hey, listen, I'm looking for my um, third great grandfather. His name was John McDonald. He was married to Mary McDonald. I think his father might have been William, um, and mother might have been um, his mother might have been Elizabeth. You might be able to narrow that down. He came here. Well, uh, he came from from Scotland sometime before. I think we were using 1812 as the example when we first saw a marriage record. So sometime before 1812, um, he was born. eh, let's say he was 21 when he was married. So he was born sometime around 1790. Um, so and I don't know where exactly he came from, but he seemed to settle in when he settled in North America. He settled in Inverness County in Cape Breton, and the people that were in the community, they all seemed to be from the around the Isle of Rum. A great name for an island. Um, so you might have so I think he's probably from the Isle of Rum. I'm not sure. So if you approach it with that, you're going to get uh, much better help, and you're going to get much better information and useful information. Um, you're going to also ingratiate yourself to the people in the form. You're likely to get them to. Now they probably won't do the research, and they probably don't know the person you're talking about. And often that's again not the question you should be asking. You should be asking when, hey, I have this detail as I just had laid out. Um, where should I start looking? Where is there any particular records in the Olive Rum that would um, that I could look at that would be visible to online so I could examine and um, see if I can find out any information about them instead of just asking a very general question and expecting somebody to do it for you. Um, the other thing too is um, going like and knowing how to respond to people is unfortunately a lot of times when I see people they do ask that very broad question and they're really they're doing a disservice to themselves and to the community and to genealogists in general by um, not even guiding the person and saying, "Hey, listen, what information do you have?" A simple question like that, and then asking some probing questions might get them to the point. Um, or even suggesting, this is if you can come back with this information, I might be able to help you better, or somebody here might be able to help you better and guide you to the right place. Um, Anyways, it's a lot of my rambling. This is it's a person I decided to help because it, they they need help there. They have a legitimate concern and they want to know their family. And um, yeah, and what records are that's a good point. Um, what records are available change a lot over time um, because as more recent records they change because they're now available. often there's new discoveries, um, and not even necessarily new discoveries, but new things that are put online from different places. Um, so you often, if you're subscribed to a package on Ancestry or My Heritage, you might see, you get emails telling you they have these new record databases that they've updated. So often that changes. It can be that they get a set of church records they never had before, where you'll be able to find the person you're looking for. So going back sometimes and revisiting definitely helps. Um, so anybody have any questions today, um, for me at all? Anything they're working on? Let me know what if you're working on something specific. And um, I have a little poll there in the chat, um, on if you make any new discoveries. If you made a new discovery, share with me what it is. Um, what new discoveries you might have made in this past week. And again, you can always ask a question on this particular video. If there's something you have a little more detail you want to ask, you can ask it. Uh, and there's a link on, should be on most of my videos, but you can just actually go to the website, http://ask.howwegotheere.ca. There's a You'll come up to a form and it'll ask you some questions, just a little bit about you, so I can, if I need to, contact you and ask some more information, to try to help you, or I can best direct you sometimes over via email, um, to try to find some of these uh, these might be brick walls, or just new ideas and new ways of approaching your genealogy. Um, my trip to Nova Scotia was really good. Um, I had a great trip. I was able um, to get a few things done. Uh, One of the reasons, not related to genealogy, we breed dogs, and our usual male was, which we own, which stays with my wife's aunts. He pulled some muscles, so he's not in breeding shape anymore. But one of our friends in Cape Breton, they had a poodle that was available for us, so our dog was going to have a romantic getaway. But when I was there, I was able to get some research done, and um, for I was working mostly on one of my clients, who, some very interesting research, very hard. It's one of those things, we've gotten to a certain point, back in France in the 1600s, and we we can't get back very much further. Um, just the information that's available. There's lots of records, but not necessarily the right records that we need, or the records that are easily read and that aren't always indexed. I did try a few tricks, and I had some fair amount of luck, um, as far as doing it. Though it didn't help with the end result, but using by downloading some of the images of these records that I was able to get, which are handwritten. Uh, Very often, the the ink from one side of the page is basically, I want to say, leaking through. So they're sometimes hard to read. But I was able to get some luck by um, putting it into the image into Google Gemini, which is excuse me, uh, an AI very similar to ChatGPT. It's Google's version, and uploading it and asking it if it could translate it, and also if it could find certain things that I'm looking for. Uh, so I really, yeah, enjoyed, I enjoyed doing, uh, just playing around with that, which I hadn't really thought of using AI that way. I have used AI taking, I've used it recently for uploading a history of the county my ancestors are from in Cape Breton, and there's a great history, but it's not an easy read, and also um, the way it goes back and forth, it, and approached. It's hard to sometimes follow, and if you were doing it for pure genealogy to make connections. So I've used it that way before, uploading that in as a PDF um, into Google Gemini and saying, "Hey, can you um, give me find every instance of this particular person if I was looking for it?" And it's able to do that a little better than just doing a search and find. Um, the, the PDFs I was using for the book were from Open Library, which are great, but they're not always the greatest index. You have to search search them, and sometimes when you're searching, um, especially in this case, I'm dealing with a Scottish community with a lot of the same names, but I could narrow it down saying, could you find the George McKinnon who, or the John McKinnon who was married to, um, or the John McKinnon who was from Malagawatch? Can you find instances of him and people that are related to him that are mentioned in the book? Uh, yeah, it it's I'm as much as it's supposed to be a really large language model for some things, it's not the greatest for history. Uh, you think it would be, um, and it can be sometimes. It can, I've used it when I'm um, developing scripture, but more looking for other ideas. I was really hopeful because years ago when I first started YouTube, I was testing for a month. I did this day in Canadian history. It's when shorts first came out, and I wanted to do a short clip, and I did it from March 15th to April 15th that year. And I wanted to, or I'm sorry, April 15th to May 15th. I wanted to. Um, the hardest part about it wasn't the creating the videos; it was finding the actual subjects. So when Chat GPT first came out, oh, this would be a great use for it for me to tell it, can you go and search and tell me about a significant event that happened on this day. Um, I did it, and used it to help me build up um, some potential scripts for and after about the 10th day into this, these videos were never released and never got to filming them because I get very discouraged. Um, I started, like, I would have it tell me to find a significant historical event that happened in Canada for every day in January, somewhere in Canadian history, and it would come back. Some things would be really good; it would have an exact thing, but then, for instance, I was going to start it at the beginning of the year. It was coming with things that said happened in January that didn't happen until later in the year, um, and the years it was quoting weren't necessarily right. So. Um, So it was very discouraging, but I have found it very useful for doing things like taking large amounts of data, feeding it into it, and asking it to to interpret that or um, even index it, um, or in the case of translation, translate it for me. Um, and then I was actually it surprised me last week when not only was it hard to read this in these documents um, from the French records I was looking for. And some it couldn't do at all because they were just very unreadable. But some it was able to take that handwriting, read it, and translate it. Um, and from the the amount of French that I do know, and my French is fairly good when it comes to written word. You wouldn't want me to speak it because I probably sound like Yoda. I would have things out of order. wrong genders, um, wrong conjugation of the verbs, etc. But uh, from reading it, I generally can put things together, but it's getting that handwriting that's sometimes very illegible and getting it. Um, Even what I was able to do was for some of these records was I was looking for a specific name, surname, so I was able to say because what I was doing is I was looking at these books, the baptism lists that aren't indexed for the community that I thought that we thought that the person we were looking for should be. So I was able to take some of the pages and upload them, and um, because I was able to find them online and upload them and say, "Can you search for the surname?" Okay, that's so you're still working on those records. Awesome. Um, yeah. Um, and again, especially if they were from well, if they came from Ireland, it's really hard sometimes to find the ship records with the individuals, the passengers lists, because we're all considered British subjects at the time. There was no immigration. There was no needing to record you. You weren't going to a foreign country, so when you arrived here, they didn't see you as a foreigner. They just saw you as it'd be like moving from one place in Canada today to another. Um, or even though you're crossing a border, you're still Canadian. In this case, they were still British, a British subject. And it was up until really I think the the 1920s that you often wouldn't find accurate records. Even until after 1867, there was a distinction, but you still sometimes don't find those records. Or a common thing with war brides, they they never they never became Canadian citizens because they never had to, or they thought they could, but they were able to work when they arrived here. They had families, they paid taxes and stuff, and often it's not until they were much older in life that they found that they were not were not Canadians, even though they might have lived here for 40 years. I had a friend tell me about his wife's parents who um, the mother had moved from England to Canada, and she assumed she was a Canadian citizen because she'd lived here for so long, and there was never any record of her not being. It wasn't until um, one of the, I believe he said it was one of his wife's sisters, I think it was, it might have been a brother, was in England, and they were visiting, and they were trying to come back to Canada. That person was not a Canadian. They were not listed as uh, Canadian citizen. They had a little bit of trouble coming back. Um, I know uh, in recent years it had been well, uh, recent years in the last 20 years there was a big thing often with um, these war brides or uh, getting getting the proper pensions because they just weren't able to be they weren't Canadian citizens, so it never went through. They made some exceptions, definitely, to let them to go through. So yeah, sometimes when you're finding like you're doing that, when you're looking for there, it's it's hard. A lot of records are in Ireland were lost. They are slowly rebuilding them. Um, the genealogists in Ireland have been doing a great job in trying to recover a lot of these records because a lot of them, um, they're trying to, they might not be able to get the exact record, but they're through using church records and trying to um, centralize some of those, get them digitized. They're doing a really good job in finding to replacements. So instead, you might not have a birth certificate, but you'll have maybe a baptism record, which would show the person's birth date. Um, you might not have a death certificate or death registration, but you'll have a record from the church of um, that person dying, their um, especially in the Catholic Church, a mass service, or so they've been doing a really good job of trying to rebuild what they can because it had been devastated twice. First, I think it was 1895, and then in the uh, revolution or rebellion, whatever you want to call it, in 1922. I think the um, their their vital where they kept the vital records had come under attack and was destroyed. So a lot of records were lost then. Um, uh, yeah, you very well might find them showing up in those. It's just sometimes they're very hard in between to find them. Um, you can use some of the clues like I was talking about with that at the beginning of this the stream when you're looking for individuals. Start looking at the community, see who else came here, see when they first showed up. So if you have the first indication that they were here and they were there in New Brunswick, well, you know that they arrived sometime before that. So if they had a child that was baptized or born in a certain year, you know that they were um, they if they were there, they were present, which it, they usually would be. Um, that would be you're looking sometime before then. It can narrow things down. And sometimes can make it a little easier. Finding out um, what other people in the community, specifically if they're from a specific church. For instance, there's a lot of the Irish um, in Prince Edward Island come from uh, the County Monaghan because uh, it's recorded that they're all there, and these groups of people you can find that that's where they came from, and people that settled in the community at about the same times were again probably from there. So I'm not sure if anybody has any questions, and I am still working on your. I haven't given up on your your records there. I was actually looking because I was looking at the a message today that you had sent me. I think it was last week before, with some um, that that I can get a chance to dig in. Um, this past it had been pretty busy this past week. Well, the week before, and then this week I was just catching up on doing some client work, um, so I can get paid. So it's always as much as I like doing a lot of these free things, that they have a spot in my priorities. Unfortunately, so excuse me. Okay. I'll probably actually wind up messaging you, possibly later tonight or tomorrow at some point, uh, Kirsty, about some of the things you had sent me. And thank you for the ideas for some videos, future videos to do. That's definitely uh, there is definitely nice to some good ideas. So, um, how are you doing, Turtle Neek? Howdy to you too. Um, So I'm getting close to the end. Though I apparently rambled for a while and nobody could hear me, um, which and I had some technical difficulties on my side, which made my starting this. stream later than it was supposed to. Um, my software didn't want to connect with the right stream, so it had started and I was going fine, and I thought, and then when I looked, it wasn't actually on. Yeah, the Fenians are really interesting, um, and the Fenian raids from the United States post Civil War. Again, that was mostly in Ontario and Quebec, um, but yeah, definitely very interesting. Uh, Very interesting part of Canadian history that doesn't often get talked about. Not a big part, but they were the reason for the first um, post Confederation political assassination was because it had to do with the Fenians. Um, there was a lot of heated bad blood, definitely. Um, and I have a hopefully have a new video coming out uh, next week. I'm going to be um, going back to my prime ministers series on Canadian prime ministers and doing a little bit on the family tree of Wilfrid Laurier. Oh, thank you very much. Um, hi, hey there, Jeffrey. Great to see you again, and thank you very much. Uh, I really enjoy this hat. It's from Ireland. Speaking, we were speaking of uh, Ireland earlier. Um, it's a it's a nice hat. I don't generally look good in hats. Um, I don't generally look good in hats, but this one, my wife agreed that it looked good on me, so and I like it. Keeps the shine from off the top of my head when I'm doing videos as well. Um, Also, you know, that's why I have the shine. So that's why I have my hat to. Uh, do I have a go-to karaoke song? Um, I haven't done karaoke in a long time, uh, but uh, generally my music that I listen to is I listen to a lot of. I have a very eclectic um, music that case that tastes that range, but I listen to actually a lot of Celtic uh, Celtic rock or Celtic punk, like um, the Angry Bryans, the uh, Dropkick Murphys, um, O'Reilly and the Patty Hats are one of my favorite groups. It comes from a sort of a weird thing. When I was younger, I was very much into heavy metal, rock music when in my teens, and I became when I went to university and I really got enthralled with um, traditional Celtic folk music, a lot of maritime folk music that's around Atlantic Canada, and uh, and I started broadening out on that and really enjoying that music, and then I started finding some of this Celtic rock, and um, and yeah, I really it just really like them. So I- I'm half Irish on my dad's side. Canadian. I was born in Canada, but my my ancestors on my dad's side were all Irish, and the ancestors on my mom's side were all Scottish. Um, at least the ones that I've been able to research and find back that arrived in Canada first, where they came from before Scotland and Ireland. Some of them came from England. Some of them I can even go back to um, some Norman um, from the early Norman conquest. Some relations I've been able to trace one line back that far, but Yeah, I consider myself. Um, I consider myself. If you ever fill out a one of those ethnicity forms, I always choose other, and I choose Celtic Canadian because that's really what I consider myself. Um, I do love most things Irish, most things Scottish. Um, you know, when I was traveling back from Nova Scotia, there's a place you can get blood pudding. Um, Stop there to make sure to see if any of my uh, Scottish friends wanted it. Um, it's not available in Prince Edward Islands because there are certain rules about um, using organs in preparing food. This way, you won't find any locally made haggis in Prince Edward Island, but you can find it elsewhere. Hmm. Well, the purpose of my existence um, is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. It comes from question one of the shorter catechism, but it really is a defining thing for me. And I would say about half my life now, I I really started following that principle. Um, Following that principle, and it motivates me, and it it gives my purpose of understanding life in the world around me. Something I've never said out loud that has shaped who I am today. Um, that's hard to say. I'm a pretty outspoken person. Um, there's there's a lot of things I don't talk a lot about. Um, some of the things when I was younger, some things I'm not proud of, some things that are neither to be proud of or not proud of. Um, but they definitely shaped the way I did. I believe all my experiences did, and that's I believe in going back. Um, One of the reasons I'm in the genealogy is because a lot of the experience of my ancestors, unknowingly to me, has shaped my life. Decisions they've made. Yes, we were all young and stupid. Uh, some of us are still stupid, though maybe not as young. Um, that's a good question. If I lost everything that defines your identity, your name, memories, relationships, and achievements, what part of you, if anything, would still remain of you? Well, eh, that's that's really hard. If I lost my name, my memories, my relationships, other than my physical body, um, but I would I believe that my you're not. I believe like even people that get dementia sometimes might have lost a lot of the things that you're talking about. Uh, there's still that inner part of their soul that um, that memory that they might have um, deep down that defines who they are. Um, I think I'm generally a good person, um, and again, that's by the world's eyes. Um, so I think that hopefully that would live on. Um, but I'm really not. I'm not worried about that so much. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes age does come along. That's a yeah. Wisdom does come with age. I know. There's many things that um, and I think often wisdom's more important than intelligence. Um, Yeah, wisdom is definitely more important than intelligence. Because you can know a lot of things, but knowing and understanding it takes a little more. Um, and it's my whole again my philosophy around genealogy and family history. One of the reasons is getting you get wisdom from understanding your ancestors. Your thank you very much. There, yes, by understanding your ancestors, um, you can get to uh, understand where their place in history was and really how they shaped um, the communities or the things that are in your life that you know. Um, uh, yeah, I think I would if I saw my future and but and didn't like what I became. Would I have the strength to change my? Oh, yeah. I would hope I would. Um, I would. It would be hard. You'd have to have understanding because often you might look at your future and you might not know what decisions brought you to that point. Um, it's the same as when you look at your past, you don't know what decisions have brought you to that point. What decisions you made or somebody else made. Um, I really, I'm not. I have great faith in God and that God will do what um, it, it's His will that's done, not mine. So um, I think again, it's not something that you'd be able to see, but it was possible. You know, uh, I would hope I would change if it was something I didn't like, but then I might have to have understanding because um, sometimes what is seems wrong in our eyes has a um, right happening. Okay. Do the Irish generally change their surname when they come to America? My ancestors' name. Um, no, not necessarily. Sometimes they did. Sometimes, um, it's particularly depending when they came. There, there wasn't the Irish weren't always seen as being very popular. It as an ethnicity. Um, they were often seen to be poor and discriminated against. So often there was times that people would try to hide that the Irishness in a sense, and that actually happens with a lot of Ulster Scots. They came from Ireland. They might have been in Ireland for a few generations. Um, they came to North America. You often find that, and this causes people some problems. Later, they always thought their family was Irish, but they find that they actually have that. They always thought the family was Scottish, but they find that they actually came from Ireland, came from Scotland before Ireland, but they came from Ireland to North America. When did I? Yeah, you guys are asking some really deep questions. When in your life do you most truly feel most truly yourself? What made that moment so real? Um, when did I feel most truly myself? That's hard because I'm constantly changing. Though at the core I'm the same, but I change my experiences, my knowledge, my wisdom. Yeah, that's a good point. Talking about if they wanted to work often, they would. Sometimes they would. Um, they wouldn't admit that they were Irish. They wouldn't admit they were from Ireland. They would just, and it was a lot easier if you had a name like Mick or Mac something. Um, Now, if you had like you were O'Reilly or an O'Brien, it's a little harder. So sometimes you will find that. I have ancestors that are O'Keefe's, and at some point they they just they drop the O. Um, I don't can't say for sure that's the reason why, but most likely it would be. Yes, yes. I, I, yeah. The guys pretending to be Italian, French, and that's uh, that that's a clip from the BBC. I think it was a comedy sketch they did. I do like that one myself, and it's true. You know, you would so in the sense that you asked if they would change their names. Yeah, you might find that back there, Sim. Yeah, if they very well could be. Um, they very well could have changed their name. Um, and it could be on purpose. It, it could be. I don't want to say. Um, it's I. It, it's not that old thing that people just say. When talking about America, you can't. They changed your name when you came on Ellis Island. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes it could be. Sometimes it could be something misheard, or um, if um, a population that existed here already in North America was used to spelling a name a certain way, um, or hearing names that often would cause a change in some type of record at some point. Particularly, I know in Canada when I look at censuses, often that's the case. Um, Especially when you're looking at in Scottish communities, you'll have mix and max, and one census there'll be one census there'll be other. And if you look at them, you'll see everybody on that census on those census pages that the person that was recording it was listed as Mac or they were listed as Mick. I even found one instance where everybody was instead of Mick Donald, they were Donald, comma Mick. Um, so again, that would be not a prejudice, or it would just be a bias that somebody would have had into understanding the names. So I am getting ready to wrap up. Uh, yeah, um, Glendy, and it could be. I'd have to. I'm not familiar with that name myself, but I'd have to see where it. Um, Again, it might be a name that was a very not so common name over in Ireland, and they did keep it, or um, could could be a very different uh, name as well that they just sort of. I don't want to say anglicized because the Irish spoke English, but they made the way they spelled it and said it. It sounds like Glendy, so that's how people wrote it. Um, so it could very well be that they were Scots Irish as well. Um, yeah, just from doing quick a quick search, it seems like uh, it was most of the people in um, that have that name in the states were from Virginia. It's very common there. So and it is a name that does exist. Um, and from what it tells me um, it's uncertain its origin. So yeah, varying Glen. So let's see. So the this says that it's um, from it's a Scottish name. So again, you could be looking at those Ulster Scots, or as you call them in the Americas, the Scots Irish. Yeah, the one from Glendinning is, yeah, exactly what the same thing I quickly found. Um, yeah, that, like I said, that's exactly what I found when a quick look. It could very well mean that. So it could be um, Glendy. Yeah, it's just it might not have been a popular name in New York. Um, and again, so you might not find a lot of them, or you might they might not have been originally um, again from they might have they might not be Irish, they might be Scots Irish, so they are Irish in the sense that they had because it's really hard. What do you say makes a person an ethnicity or a nationality? How long do you have to live there? Especially in times before they had proper citizenships. What made how long? How many generations do you have to live in Ireland to be considered Irish? Um, Now it's still a debate here on Prince Edward Island where I live. Um, uh, the um, you know, unless you're born in Prince Edward Island, you're technically not an islander. They'll say, even if you were moved here one day after you were born, but you weren't born in a Prince Edward Island hospital, you're not, or a Prince Edward Island community. You weren't, or you're not an islander. Just likewise, you could move away after you were 1 or 2 days old and die somewhere else, and you'll be considered an islander. Um, yeah. Um, the Glen, yeah, I associate Glen with Scottish whiskies. A lot of them have the name Glen because uh, it means, well, like a metal rolling hill at Glen, I think. Um, so I kind of thought it might be Irish, Scottish. Yeah. Um, so yeah, definitely that's what I that's the same thing when I did a quick search, but it doesn't mean that that's actually the name um, that the name Glendy, the one that people took. It could even be sometimes people have taken on a new surname for another reason. Um, they often, if depending on the circumstances, it could be not an adoption type thing, but if somebody um, came came to North America, and especially when they were young and somebody had taken them in, they might have taken their family name to be associated with that family. So I'm going to get ready to head out now. I will be back again next week at 6:05 Atlantic, 5:05 Eastern on Friday night. Um, Hopefully, I won't have any difficulties, and you won't have any difficulties finding me. Uh, until then, just keep searching for your ancestors, and um, hope to see you all soon. And if you do have any questions, definitely leave them in the in the uh, you can leave them in the chat here, in the comments on this video if you're watching it in the replay, and also you can definitely um, fill out the form by going to ask.howwegothere.ca. So everybody, you have a great night, and I'll talk to you next week.